Shoshana Bean.
Hi, this is Melissa Peterman, and you are listening to The Baub Show on the UBN Network. You lucky bastard.
And now, here's Baub!
Welcome back to the show, everybody. I'm just going to put it out there, my favorite show I've ever done in 4.5 years. Sitting here today with my co-host, Brendan Bradley.
Hello.
And sitting here, she's been on every vision board I've ever made when I've said, which guest do I want on my show? Marianne Williamson is sitting here with me.
Thank you.
I'm so happy to have you here. Just quickly glancing through the chat room, people are talking about their civics class and talking about how one person said their civics class was so long ago, I don't remember it. I memorized it for the test and that was it. Eric says, we were exposed in civics classes, but teachers are not allowed to get us interested by encouraging opinions and involvement. Parents would complain that they're indoctrinating or influencing their kids. So it's a terrible time. I mean, I don't know why you would give civics lessons to us in a 7th grade.
You don't know why you would give it?
Well, I mean, it feels a little bit too young. Like I feel like.
Oh God, no!
You don't think so?
First of all, 7th grade. I don't know if this is. I don't hear anything here. 7th grade is people are thinking in the 7th grade. What is that? 12 years old? I mean, that's an important time. That's exactly when civics should be taught. In fact, my girlfriend was handing me these little cards that this little 9-year-old gave her to help me with my campaign because they were little cards about democracy and the Constitution. No, 7th grade is exactly when we need to start hearing about it. And that's a sad comment that the person wrote in about. I think it's true that too many times if a teacher wants to say, well, what would be the issue here? And then the parents would complain if they're conservative or liberal. So we should be fostering the free exchange ideas, not limiting them.
Well, because I love what you said. Politics is actually having the conversation. It's
Absolutely.
not about what just happens in the voter booth. I know Brendan has a question for you.
Well, and it speaks exactly to what we're talking about, which I'm so excited about, which is in this time of unprecedented conversation. I mean, the internet is this overwhelming place where people do express their ideas, and unfortunately, it's a lot to do with what was on Celebrity Chef last night and not what's going on in their own backyard. But can you speak at all to the untapped potential of people getting involved in the conversation through these social media outlets that are free? They don't cost big lobbying dollars.
Mm-hmm.
You can log on and express the values and opinions for free.
Well, you're so naming the problem. And we're talking a lot, but we're having meaningless conversations too often. And we're allowing ourselves to be distracted by things that don't ultimately matter. Part of living a conscious life is getting to the point where all that matters is what really matters. So what you have is a political class that talks about these political issues, some of whom are very conscious and intelligent, some of whom we might not agree with. The point is, it can't just be one segment of your society that's talking about a future that belongs to all of us. So I think that things happen when we wake up. I mean, your life heals one aha moment at a time. And I think more people, like you said, are saying, I think I'm going to Google that. I was at a bookstore the other night, and a woman asked a question about drones and drone warfare. And, the whole thing of drones is that they are unmanned aircraft. So somebody in middle America somewhere is pushing a button and a bomb drops on somebody in some, other country. It's and the real argument against drones, in addition to the horrific moral implications of this, have to do with the fact that some people in the security and military world say for every terrorist we're killing, we are creating 40 more because the people around them are also dying. You say, oh, wow, we know exactly the house that terrorist is at 4 o'clock today, so we're going to send a drone to kill him. Well, maybe it's nice that he's taken out from some perspective, but everybody else in that house died as well. And not only that, but everybody in that city lives in total fear because of these birds flying around their town that could drop bombs at any time. By the way, don't kid yourself, these drones are actually coming to your local police force. But what was interesting to me was a woman asked a question about drones, and I turned around to the rest of the room and I said, how many of you even know what she's talking about? And only a few people raised their hands. I said, this is the problem. Not just what my view would be about drones, but that not enough of us in America have read Jeremy Scahill's book, Dirty Wars, have read about this. And the exciting thing to me, and then why I'm doing this, why this campaign is already exciting to me, is that I know how many people who were there that night, were then going to go home and Google drones. That's politics. That's the awakening of the American people. Because I think that it's one of those things where, the American people are good, we're decent, we have a conscience. But if we're distracted and not even having the conversation, then we're not there to say, what the hell is going on?
That was one of my favorite things that you said the other night. You said that this isn't about whether or not you win. It's how we start the conversation and how we.
Well, yes, and if I may, if all I want to do is expand a conversation, I've been doing that for 30 years to the best of my ability. I don't have to run for office. So I think for those of us who are involved in the kinds of topics that you and I concern ourselves with, we want to be careful not to get stuck in that conversation. Well, at least we're starting the conversation. It is too late in America. We do not have enough time to just start a conversation. For that matter, the conversation has started. The conversation is already a major cultural impulse. No, we need to apply it in a practical way inside electoral politics. So if all we want to do is start a conversation, then we get to stay within our comfort zones. I need people to say, no, we want to win this campaign to whatever extent possible. Because if all I want to do is start the conversation, I won't necessarily show up to volunteer. I won't have a house party. I won't have a fundraiser. I won't donate. I won't worry about talking to my friends or putting it on Facebook. We need to kick ass here.
I'll just go see her at the
having
Saban.
a conversation, yeah, just having a conversation keeps us in a nice, respectable second place.
Well, we have a caller. Who do we have on the phone?
Hello.
Oh, hi.
Hi.
Who do we have?
Well, you may know me from your past, so I'm one of those.
We're all looking at each other. Who
Yeah.
exactly?
Who's past?
Who's past?
Oh, yeah.
What's
Yes,
your name?
And I have stories. So, do you remember when you and I used to deliver newspapers?
Wait, who
are you calling
who's
for?
Who's past are you referring to?
I'm calling for Bob.
Oh,
And you had a dog named Kalina?
I do. Is this Eric Larson?
It certainly is.
Oh my God, Eric, how are you?
I'm great. And I just looked up the Baub Show, and I thought I should call in and take up some of your valuable time. Just say hello, and I love your show.
Well, I love that. I haven't talked to you in years. Do you know that I'm sitting here with Marianne Williamson?
I'm sorry?
Do you know that I'm sitting here with Marianne Williamson?
You're kidding.
No. Do you have a question for her?
Why don't you let me think about that for a minute?
Well, why don't you call us back when you've got one?
Yeah,
so we can let somebody else call us up.
Okay, well, I will do that.
Perfect. Thank you, Eric.
But thank you for calling, Eric. It's so good to hear your voice.
Hey, nice to hear you.
And if anyone else would like to call us up, you can call us up at 323-284-7826 and hear our voices as well as participate in the conversation. Anything that you've got for Marianne.
My paper out when I was 11 years old. That should give you an idea of how long that phone call has been. So we talked about this before the break. I want to talk about the pyramid and the eye.
All right, so
that.
this is the deal. On the Great Seal of the United States, which is on everybody's dollar bill, you can take out your dollar bill and you'll see it. The Great Seal of the United States was designed by our founders, by Jefferson, by Washington, by Benjamin Franklin. Many of the signers of the Declaration of Independence were Masons, members of secret societies. Benjamin Franklin was a Rosicrucian and so forth. And this was and is a major metaphysical symbol. That is the Great Pyramid at Giza. But what's interesting is that the Great Pyramid at Giza used to have a capstone. We know that it had a capstone. We know that it was gold. We know that on it in blue was painted the Eye of Horus. And the way the sun would hit that gold capstone, people for many miles could see that that's where the pyramid was. Well, the capstone was removed, theoretically thousands of years ago, and nobody knows where it is. Archaeologists have not found it. If it had simply dropped off, it would have been found already. Yeah. And there are all kinds of theories about where it is. Now, in the traditions of metaphysical lore, it is said that the wisdom of humanity will reemerge when the capstone is found beneath the sands of Egypt. Well, our Great Seal is a picture of the pyramid with the capstone returned. And underneath are the words in Latin, Novus Ordo Seclorum, New Order of the Ages. New Order of the Ages, when the capstone is returned, the all-seeing eye, meaning when humanity has evolved into its wisdom. The reason democracy matters, American democracy matters, is not just in the political history of the world, but in the philosophical history of the world. Because taking power from a monarchy and an aristocracy and placing it in the hands of people was a philosophical statement. It was a philosophical action whereby we were recognizing the power of the inner self, that it would be the wisdom of someone, regardless of their education, regardless of their money, regardless of their background, regardless of their parents, regardless of their education. The reason the founders demanded universal education so that everyone would have educated critical thought forms, wanted a free press so that we would be informed. And then from that, it was believed that the wisdom in you and the wisdom in you and the wisdom in me is the only safe repository of the power to govern this nation. And that's why everything we're talking about here, what you think, what I think, to disenthrall ourselves from this belief that, well, the experts understand it better than I do. The people in Washington understand it better than I do. That right there is where democracy is broken and where the founders had such a radical and profound idea.
I love that so much. So here's a question for you. I completely think, this is not by me, by the way, a question that I received. I completely think money in politics is the largest problem. It costs over $2 billion to run for president in 2012. How can anyone compete with that? And after you are indebted with so much big money contributions, they obviously expect something in return. Until you take money out of politics, how do you fix the problem? And how do you take money out of politics?
This person is absolutely 100% correct. I feel exactly the same way. It is true. And that's part of why I'm running and why the cornerstone of my campaign is exactly that. How do we do it? Well, there are a lot of different interim steps, but the ultimate ideal here is a constitutional amendment that would get the money out of politics. Getting a constitutional amendment passed is huge. But, sometimes people go, oh, it'd be so hard. Well, what if the abolitionists had said, it's so hard? What if the women's suffragettes had said, it's so hard? Of course it's hard, but that doesn't mean it's not worth doing. In the meantime, here New York's electing a mayor. New York is working on dealing with a plan having to do with public financing of campaigns, because that's what we need, for the very reasons that letter says. There is something called the Americans Anti-Corruption Act. As a matter of fact, one of the things that I'm going to have in my campaign is an issues forum starting in January. Adam Winkler, who is a national expert on this topic, will be speaking. I don't know the date in January yet. He's a UCLA professor. He spoke at Sister Giant as well. So absolutely, that's a cornerstone of the external point of this campaign, and we will be talking about this throughout the campaign. So there are steps that we can take, but Congress cannot legislate public funding until we have that constitutional amendment to override Citizens United. Citizens United, which I think will go down in history as one of the worst decisions ever made by an American Supreme Court, has given unlimited permission to moneyed interests, whether they're individuals or corporates or union or whatever else, to give on an anonymous basis, no less, money to, not to specifically to the political candidates, but to the advertising campaigns having to do with issues that could defeat them. So this is, but it's important for us to remember that the founders did not create the Supreme Court to lord over us. The American people always have the opportunity to prevail, but not if we're asleep, not if we're in a stupor, not if we're numb, not if we're distracted. And that's part of what this campaign is about.
Which is, we talked about this a little bit during the break. As I said, I'm not proud of the fact that, and like you said, you didn't say this about me, but it is true. When it comes to politics, I act like a 12-year-old girl, and I'm like, oh, I don't care. It doesn't affect me. Like that is borderline description of me. It's not that I don't care. It's that when I feel like I can't do something about it, I focus on what I can do in my bubble, in my environment, in my community. So I attack that, because otherwise I get too overwhelmed in the big stuff and I shut down. That's me personally.
May I ask where you live?
Burbank.
Okay, you don't live in my district, but if you did live in my district, this is what I would say to you. If I win, I want you to come see me in Washington, and I'm going to give you a pass one day to watch some congressional proceedings. And I promise you, you'll be so like, oh my God, I had no idea it was this intense and profound and cool. Like, have you been to Washington?
No.
So you've never been to the Lincoln Memorial?
No.
You've never been to the Vietnam Memorial?
No.
You've never been to the Jefferson Memorial? It will blow your mind.
Mm-hmm. And I believe that, because it's not that I don't care.
I understand.
It's
that people feel paralyzed.
It's sort of what you're talking about, and I'm asking this because of the thing I was going to ask, like a great example, and I think this might be kind of what you're talking about, but I don't really know. I want to talk about the Koch. Is it the Koch brothers?
The Koch brothers.
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
But is that an example of what you're talking about? These people that can just throw tons of money at something
they are absolutely
to get what they
example.
want.
Absolutely. They're taking advantage of the Supreme Court decision, Citizens United, which gives them permission to legally do what they do. This is a system today of legalized corruption. So they are they have a very specific point of view, and it has to do with what has happened over the last few decades is that it's been kind of like a vacuum cleaner, just taking up the major resources of the public purse and tilting them in the direction of a small segment of our society. We do this through trade policies, we do this through tax policies, we do this through banking policies. And people like the Koch brothers think that America is better off when that is how it is. Mm-hmm. Many of us do not. But
because it benefits them.
It benefits them. Now, this has been a contest that America was born of this contest. American history has always been this narrative that's a contest between those who believe in the larger issue of actual equality of opportunity, actual democracy, and those who think that that's actually not a good idea. That a few people should it's a continuation basically of an aristocratic perspective. But this country was founded on the repudiation of an aristocracy. This country was founded on the repudiation of the king. But especially since the Supreme Court has given them the kind of power to do what they do, like I said, it's corrupt, but it's legal. The only antidote to that is the arousal of the American people. The only antidote to that. And by the way, all that money will mean nothing in the face of all the people being aroused. But if you have people not voting, not participating, then don't complain that the thief is stealing your country.
So I want to ask a couple, because I know we're running low on time, but there's a couple of questions I want to ask about the spiritual nature of all of this. And the first one being, what happens when they start attacking that part of you? Because you know politics get dirty, and you know that you're going to be under attack.
Right.
How are you planning to deal with that?
Well, I feel that the biggest enemy is my own thin skin. My biggest enemy or my biggest vulnerability is my thin skin and my reactive mind. Mm-hmm. And so what a perfect spiritual journey this is for me. How perfect. I need to be non-reactive. I need to remember to practice what I preach to the best of my ability. In my defenselessness, my safety lies. If I defend myself, I'm attacked. That would be where I might be vulnerable, not what they say.
Does it change at all having, because I don't want to say you were anticipating it, but there's a knowing that you're going to be attacked.
Yeah, and it's why it took a year of deep inquiry within my own heart and with very close friends and family, deciding whether or not I would do this, because I'm not looking forward to that. On the other hand, I've been smeared in the press before. I was smeared early on in my career. It was horrifying. I mean, it was terrible, but it was also a kind of inoculation. And I think the culture has moved forward. I don't think the culture is as willing to just mock anybody whose ideas are outside the box, particularly women. There was an article in today's Huffington Post that I have on my own Facebook page and Twitter by a woman named Natalia someone, and it says, "A New Age in Politics," where it talks about, you can joke about this, but it's no joke. Joe Klein in Time magazine said you can joke about this, but I'm not sure it's a joke. So I know it's coming, and to the best of my ability. One of the reasons I feel that to the best of my ability, I'm at least prepared to try to be prepared within myself, or prepared to try to get it right. I also know that I have friends and people who agree with me to my left and to my right and in front of me and behind me. If you start putting down my ideas as kind of just some naive blabber, then a lot of people feel, well, if her ideas are, then so are mine.
Yeah.
And, some people would say that it's naive to think that love rather than money should be our bottom line. Some people will say that it's naive to say that humanitarian values rather than economic values should be our bottom line. However, I believe that what's naive is to think that we will survive as civilization as we know it for another 200 years. If we do not make this transition away from short-term economic gain to humanitarian values as our societal and civilization's bottom line. This is unsustainable. This kind of income disparity is unsustainable. Corrupting your food supply is unsustainable. Ruining your environment and is unsustainable. The kind of unnecessary human suffering that is happening in our midst is unsustainable. So I don't think this conversation is naive. And so when that stuff comes at us, oh, New Age princess, whatever, already there's been a little of it. I'm still laughing, but I know the heavy canon hasn't come yet. But that's why I hope that people will support. And if they see us do, I was saying to my friend the other day, she said, "Oh, I saw that mean Twitter," and I said, "Yeah, well, did you tweet? Did you tweet back?" And said, "Well, actually, I agree with her," or whatever.
Yeah. Well, that's a good thing that you can remind people that we can be doing. Has Henry Waxman had any response to you running?
Yes, he made a statement. He said that he was pleased. I've talked about what a good congressman he is. He said he was grateful for the fact that I think he's a good congressman. He said, that's what it begs the question. Why don't you run in a district where you could defeat a Republican and help us win the House back? He said, but I respect her right to run. Look, I do not feel I'm running against Henry Waxman, but I do feel I'm running against a political status quo, which is not a container for the kind of forward movement that we need at this time. New wine will not come in those old bottles of that system. And I'm sorry, the two political parties have a chokehold. I'm running as an independent.
That's what I was going to say. We didn't mention that.
Yeah, because the two political parties, I've been a Democrat all my life, but I think that one of the most unfortunate factors in American politics over the last few decades has been the way progressives have sort of given the Democratic Party a pass. Both the Democrats and the Republicans are way too corporatist for my taste. This rightward trend is not just the Republicans. I'm not saying there's no difference between the two. I feel there is a difference between the two. Absolutely. Please don't get me wrong. But I believe that the kind of change, the new conversation that is required now will come as abolition did, as civil rights did, as women's suffrage did, first and foremost from the American people. Then the parties will pick it up. The idea of a new conversation at this point coming from the parties when it's so clear what they're both saying and what they both plan to be saying is just, that's what's naive and absurd. It's time for the American people to weigh in, and that's what I want this campaign to be.
So much. Really quickly, though, I want to ask you, for all of your people that love you and follow you as I do, that also seek something else from you, which is your spiritual talkings that you do weekly. How are you? Are those going to go by the wayside,
No.
or how are you going to divide your time?
This is how it works. If people want to know about the political campaign, that's at marianneforcongress.com or mariannewilliamsonforcongress.com. And this Thursday night at the Source Center in Venice, we will have our first weekly volunteer meeting. For those who want to know more about the campaign, November 20th, I'll be speaking in Santa Monica at Lincoln Middle School. All of that information is on my Facebook page, on my Twitter, and on marianneforcongress.com. Now, on Monday nights, completely separate from the campaign, I give my regular talks about spirituality, transformation, Course in Miracles, and so forth. That is on Monday nights at 7:30. At the now called Arc Theater at 614 North La Brea. People can find out about that at Marianne.com. These two worlds need, for legal reasons, to be kept separate.
Sure.
I can't talk about the campaign on the Monday nights. I can't use those talks to promote the campaign. But during the campaign, I'm certainly talking about all these holistic issues because that's part of the new conversation.
Mm-hmm. So we're not going to lose you to that, because I think that's been some of the other tweets and stuff that I've gotten is that's been a concern, that if we lose you to politics, we lose you in this place that makes our heart feel good over here. Even though it's not a lose, it's a win-win, because we want you.
Well, politics
I kind of would
simply,
have you there.
Neil Donald Walsh was saying to me, he was saying politics is our spirituality embodied. So I don't think it's separate. These categories are all, it's like my father, when we were children, he would show us a map of the world in an atlas, which didn't have the national boundary lines. He'd say, God did not draw a line between Spain and France. God did not draw a line between the United States and Canada. These categories are not ultimate. They are simply man-made categorization. So to me, it is an extension of our spirituality into the world. How spiritual can we be when we're not taking a stand about 17,000 children starving to death every day? How spiritual can we be when we're not recognizing the horror of our high incarceration rate and what this is meaning for so many people? How can we claim to be spiritual and not notice the corruption of our food? So I don't think that this is not the spiritual. But for anyone who wants to hear a solidly Course in Miracles, as I do, that is every Monday night, 7:30, Arc Theater, and for me as well as for other people, that's real meaningful too. That one night
I love
a
that you
week
said
we
that
just
during. I
stay
love
there.
that you said that during the break, that you realized when you were speaking last night that it's as much for you as it is for us.
Well, that's always been true, and I don't think it could ever be more true than now.
I love that. We're gonna do one little quick thing that we do with our guests called Getting to Know You.
Getting to know you, getting to know all about you.
Getting.
So these are a couple little quick questions that I love to ask our guests, and I haven't asked them in a while, but I feel like there's probably a misperception about you that you're serious all the time.
Oh.
And one of the things that I know about you, the day that you came into my life, a friend of mine had invited me to Agape, and I had never heard of Agape. It was all beyond me. And I walked in late, and because of traffic, blah, blah, blah. And I walked in, and you happened to be standing there. I had never heard of you before. And you happened to be standing there reading from this book called The Gift of Change. And I closed the door behind me, and you said, "It's like the time I took my daughter to a Bette Midler concert." And it's a whole chapter in here that from that moment on, I was like, I'm in the right place. And I thought it was so interesting. Had you said anything else, I might, but I was tuned into you from that very second. And you talked all about Bette Midler and Sophie Tucker. And so I know you have a sense of humor. So my first question is, do you have a favorite joke?
Why do we forget jokes? I forget jokes. I think I have a favorite joke and then I forget it. I do have.
Which is amazing because you speak.
I know. I love jokes, but I can't remember any right now. I don't know what that is. Do you find that you forget jokes?
To be totally
What
fair
is
to you,
that?
if anybody asks me that question, I have one, and it is so stupid from like kindergarten. It's what's green and sings in your cupboard. Elvis Parsley. I'm telling you, I don't. But I love a joke. I love a joke,
and I love to
laugh.
tell jokes.
And
but
you
I
could tell me a
can't-
joke today, and then tell it to me again next week, and it's like I've never heard it before.
Now, I'm very joke-filled in the way I live my life, but I don't. Trust me, my friend is laughing a little hard over it.
but you do have a sense of humor that
Well,
people don't
I think
realize.
even people who hear me lecture,
If you were a superhero, what would your superpower be?
to love, which is our superpower. All of us do have that. There is no greater power. Couldn't be a greater power.
If you could go back in time and talk to your teenage self, what advice would you give?
Oh, have more self-confidence.
I love that. The world. Finish these sentences. The world needs.
All of us to love more.
I'm grateful for.
My daughter,
I believe in.
love.
And if you could have a dinner party with 5 people, living or dead, who would it be?
Thomas Jefferson, Abraham Lincoln, Jesus. Wow. So many people, so little food at the table. I have to think about.
Not if you have Jesus there.
Living dead. Those for sure. Maybe Cleopatra. Cleopatra.
I think that.
It would be a woman.
Wait, she's mouthing something.
Who?
Marie
No,
Antoinette.
Marie Antoinette. I would not. That slot's too important. I only have one. It's a woman, but who would it be exactly? I'm not sure about that 5th place.
It can be open because I'll be totally fair. Mine changes all the time, but there's 2 people that are always at my table.
Yeah.
You and Bette Midler.
Oh, I'm so honored by that. I'm so honored.
I'm never smart enough to go back in time to Marie Antoinette, but you and Bette Midler have always been.
Wow.
Because I've asked this question for years. You've always been in my 5. Final thought: how does it make you feel when somebody like me, and I know I'm not alone, I keep telling people, first of all, I cried 3 times during your speech that day because I felt so empowered and inspired. But I keep telling people, I know that I didn't just sit in the front row and watch you run for Congress. I believe in my heart of hearts, you could go the whole distance and become president of the United States. How does that make you feel? Because I know I'm not the only one feeling that.
Well, it certainly is very kind. I go into a joke answer with that, which is, if I'm ever president, I will paint the Oval Office mauve. I think
you had a joke in you.
I think my age alone probably prohibits that from happening, because I'm 61 now. I think maybe if I was 45 or 50, I would say, well, maybe someday. But
would it be something you'd be willing to do if it navigated itself?
It's such an outrageous possibility, that even to live there from any other place than when I even begin to have any kind of serious thing, I do think about my age and think, well, that's not going to be me. One of the things that, most probably, certainly, one of the things that as a Course in Miracles student, we're really trained in terms of disciplined thought. None of us are indispensable and none of us are special. Each of us has a role to play. All of us are special and none of us are special. Do I wish to see someone as president speaking many of the ideas that I feel strongly about in my heart? Absolutely. But that doesn't have to be me. Do you know what I'm saying? Yeah. I don't know what part we never know what part we're playing in the assembly line.
Yeah.
And so we all want to be there when the ketchup bottle has the sticker on it and the top and the ketchup in the bottle. You never know what your place in the assembly line is. And living in the present, which is what all this is about. Right now, I feel the calling of my heart to do this now. I have no idea what the calling of my heart will be tomorrow or the next day or the next year. But the very fact that people even think of me that way, I'm so honored and grateful that anyone would even say that.
Well, I do. It has been a complete and total honor. And like we said during the break, I could be doing an entire 4-hour show with you, especially right now on the law of divine compensation, on work, money, and miracles. And I actually was successful a few years ago on A Course in Weight Loss. And I had lost 80 pounds. And that book was part of my... That was part of my journey with that.
Oh, wow.
Then I went and made a movie. 2 years later, here we are.
Okay, let's do that show then.
Time to start reading the book again. Oh, yeah, if you want to come in here and do a one-on-one and about Course in Weight Loss, we will. My point is, I can't thank you enough for everything that you've done for me that you don't even know that you've done for me. And just being here today has meant the world to me. You guys do me a favor, and it doesn't matter if you're in California or not. Go to marianneforcongress.com. You can sign up. You can be part of her newsletter. If you have the opportunity, volunteer. Even if you're not in California, you can donate. Donate $5 for her campaign and to help get her message that you've just been listening to for the last hour. Help her spread that word. More importantly, help her spread the conversation. You can also follow her on Twitter at Marianne Williamson. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much.
Beyond. We're going to take a break, and we're going to come back with some final thoughts with Brendan and I, but we'll be right back.